Jim Kunkle here. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel and set the notification bell to all so that you won't miss any of my new content. Today is Monday, April 13th, 2020, and I'd like to thank all my subscribers. At the beginning of January, I set a goal of adding 100 new subscribers in the first 100 days of my channel, and I've achieved that, thanks to you. As a special, I'd like to offer to you an interview with Paul Atzemis and Jack Walker from a Carboline Tech Services podcast. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe to my channel and set the notifications to receive all of my new content. Hope you enjoy the interview. Thank you. Joining me today is Paul Atzemis and Jack Walker from the Carboline Tech Services podcast. Welcome, Jack. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, Jim. It's really great to be here with you.
Hey, Jim. How's it going?
Really good, really good. So the first question I would have for you guys, having the most successful and the number one rated technical podcast for the protective coatings industry, how do you guys feel being so popular?
Well, I mean, it helps that there's one, right? I mean, I mean, there's a couple new ones, right? There's a couple coming out, but it helps to be first, I guess, right?
Yeah, it helps to be that, at the point that we're recording this with Jim, we're at like episode 127. So it puts us a big leg up on everybody else, and it's really great to be a trendsetter and a leader in the industry.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it, now you have other NACE International's doing a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
SSPC just premiered a podcast, and I'm sure there's other content creators out there and other organizations and companies that are probably looking to do the same. I've had the opportunity to know you guys for a number of years and had the opportunity 2 times to be on your podcast. And what I always found interesting about the podcast is that you're able to find weekly content that's relative and very informative in our industry. How do you guys go about finding content to do programs on?
Well, Jim, really, it's kind of one of those things where the information kind of comes to us, or the questions kind of come to us. We do get some from listener feedback, whether it be our sales reps or customers, but a lot of it is truly fed from what we do on a daily basis. And up until recently, even Jack was in tech service with me, and being in tech service, we get to talk to people every day. We get to hear what their questions are, what their concerns are, what things are going on in the industry that maybe have people concerned or that isn't fully understood. And it could be not understood by an applicator or by an owner, a specifier, an inspector. So talking with all of those people every day. And with the Carboline Tech Service, we do hundreds of phone calls a day and emails on top of that. And now recently our chat function, with our work from home atmosphere right now, our chat function has stepped up tremendously. We've started to get a lot of responses in that way. And it really we're kind of that sounding board that everybody's able to ask questions to. So when we get those topics that say, several things that have happened over a week or a couple of weeks, we look at it and Jack and I will sit down and say, maybe that's a topic. And that's usually the direction we go.
Yeah, we're lucky. We get to have these conversations all the time. So the kind of what we do in the podcast is kind of what we do in our daily life. It was funny when the executive team at Carboline first heard the podcast. They were like, "How long did it take them to write this script?" And we're like, "Script? What's a script?" And it's just one of those things where it's just kind of natural to just take those conversations that we have in the office and just put a microphone in front of our faces and have that conversation.
Yeah, I remember maybe 2 years ago now, going into St. Louis and the Carboline into the headquarters and seeing you guys have the topics board. You had everything kind of pinned up there. And it was just amazing to see the amount of material and information you had. And the other thing, too, is I think when you go to the different conferences like the SSPC Coatings Plus Conference or the NACE Corrosion, that gives you guys a lot of opportunity to connect also with the industry and get additional information from the industry as well.
It really was. The those conferences were something that a lot of people asked us, how did you pick who it was you were going to talk to and what you were going to do? And I mean, I'm sure if you've listened to the podcast, up to now, we're not hiding the fact we're kind of nerdy. So, when we look at a something neat or new or interesting, if it catches our interest when we were walking around the show floor, it was easy to say, hey, I want to talk to that person and get something from that company and be able to present it. And in some of those cases, it's just an advertisement, but it's an advertisement for something that's new and unique and upcoming in our industry. And, it was the same way we did with the podcast when it started was, it was a unique thing that was happening. So especially when we went to that first conference, a lot of the people had never been on a podcast before, and a lot of them didn't listen. So we were able to use our podcast as a format for people to be able to come and talk.
Nerdy, I don't know what you're talking about. That's not a Darth Vader dartboard right there. Those aren't pop vinyl Star Wars guys right there. I don't know.
So what kind of feedback have you gotten from listeners and also from different professionals in the industry?
I honestly, one of my favorite stories, you just brought up that we've been going to these conferences, and at your conference, SSPC this year, Paul and I were setting up, and we had a gentleman come by the booth, and he's doing this. He's like looking around. He's trying to figure out like who can see us. And then I noticed that this particular gentleman was wearing a competitor's tie, and he goes, "I just want you guys to know you're doing a really good job." And then he like ran away, and I was like, "Okay, there we go. That's a good mark of success when the competitor is enjoying your work, but doesn't want anybody to know that he's talking to you." I thought that was a pretty good measure of success.
Yep.
Yeah, I would imagine that a lot of professionals in the industry, especially from your side and the manufacturing side, they're listening, and they're also relating a lot of their war stories like you guys do in a lot of the different episodes that you do. So, obviously great content, very technical focused, but obviously, Jack, you are a master comedian, and your jokes are absolutely amazing. And
Mrs. Walker does not agree with you.
So this gives you the opportunity to interject the humor into the podcast episodes.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, and we try, because anytime I try to talk to somebody about the podcast, I was talking to my neighbor last night. We were doing a little porch happy hour, because things are how they are. And I was telling him about the podcast, and like I hear this inner monologue in my head where I'm like, "Yeah, we talk about paint drying. Wait, no, yeah, it's about because you try to explain it to people who aren't in our industry what it is that we do and things like that. And like every time I'm like, yep, we have a podcast about paint, and we realize that if we literally just hammer off on the standards exactly, it'll be really dry and really boring. And so what we try to do is make sure that there's some relatability, whether it's to everyday experiences, pop culture, or jokes, just to lighten the mood, make sure people are still paying attention, kind of the education without necessarily, the tricking people into some education kind of theory is kind of how I go about it.
And, it is one of those things so Jack and I were friends before we started doing the podcast. We worked together, and we've been friends for a few years. And being able to do something that we were comfortable with each other, we were able to let our personalities show through a little bit, is really what has been the key behind it. If we were just two guys who were thrown together in a room and said, now talk about paint, you would have a very different podcast. It would be a very different experience.
Yeah. I regularly joke that I don't want to be responsible for anybody wrecking their car because they're listening to me talk about paint. So,
yep.
So both of you have to deal with the power dynamic of fandom. How do you guys remain friends while you have this entourage, probably of followers and fans?
Paul, do you want to take a stab at that one? I mean, right now they try to keep everybody away from me, especially small children, with this mustache. So I'm not necessarily feeling the fame or fortune. So
it was interesting. My wife was actually at a conference, and let me start with, my whole family denies that I have anything to do with podcasting or anything neat, cool, or trending. But my wife was at a conference, and they were talking about different means of communications, different ways of learning. And somebody brought up, they started talking about podcasts, and they were asking lots of questions. And my wife kept putting her hand up saying, yeah, and yep, I know about that. Yep, I know about that. And they said, so you seem to know a lot about podcasts. And, she's been a guest on a couple of them before for her work. And they said, so what else have you had experience with it? And she had to kind of slump, and she goes, oh, my husband does podcasts. And it was for the first time in public that she actually had to admit it. That
Mrs. Walker listens to every episode, but I think it's truly just to know what I'm telling the world about our family, because early on she said, I don't know that I like everybody knowing this about us, because I will have small talk with Paul where I talk about what's going on with my family, because everybody's got a family, everybody's got kids, it's relatable, and it's something that, if Paul and I just go up there and go, well, when you do a bridge, you need to make sure that the themes, nobody's going to listen to that. That's not fun. It's not entertaining. It's already hard enough with the topics that we have. So we want to make sure, that we do things differently. So we shot a VP out of a cannon to pick a topic, things like that, to just try and make sure that when we're not talking about necessarily the subject, there's at least some entertainment going on top of the learning.
Well, I kind of remember, I think, a statement about beating a dead horse.
Oh, yeah.
Was there any blowback on that statement?
No, because, contrary to popular belief, nobody really listens to our show. So it didn't really hit the PETA radar. We tried. We picked on PETA a little bit with some of their statements they made around that time, and it turned into a whole feed a fed horse, because that was PETA's preference. And then we had some sound, the whole thing evolved, and this is just kind of how the jokes work, is we made one joke, and then somebody at work was like, if you beat a horse, it doesn't make a sound, because we had made
if you beat a dead one, it
doesn't make a sound, right? Yeah, and we had put this sound effect of a horse getting whipped with the beating of the dead horse with a joke, and it just evolved and was this really funny bit talking about, well, if a horse is dead, does it make a sound when you beat it? And it's totally morbid, and it's not something that you would think of that would come up on a paint podcast, but I am on this podcast and my brain does weird things sometimes.
Very interesting.
It's an insight into the behind the scenes of a tech service mind, that those are the thoughts that go through.
Yeah, the story behind the story there. So, obviously there's nothing wrong with being a podcaster or even a YouTuber. You have a lot of support, I know, that Carboline leadership has given you guys. Is there any future plans for the Tech Services podcast? Are you looking to do any other type of branch outs, video or other type of programs?
So there's always stuff in development. And, it's funny. We were doing a work conference call the other day, and about halfway through it, there was a moment of silence, and my boss goes, Jack, entertain us, because it was a happy hour. And I was like, wait a minute. No, that's not how this works. But, we are hoping to branch out into some video. We're still exploring the best way to go about that, whether we want to go. We might, unfortunately, do internal. We get a lot of feedback from our sales reps. They love what we're doing, but our target is the customer. And so our sales reps are getting a little selfish, and they want a little something for themselves too. They're like, hey, Jack and Paul are great, but we need their help too. And so we're looking at some of that stuff and some other avenues down, because video is 100% the name of the game. 2020, obviously.
And Jim, I'm sure you've seen this as you've developed your brand here. it's hard to be unique when a lot of people are doing it. And that's really the problem that we've run into when we started looking at doing some more video work of showing how to use a piece of equipment or showing how a standard can be applied, when in a lot of cases, the manufacturers are really stepping up in the last couple of years and they're doing some really good work. So I don't know that I can put together a better video than the manufacturer did of how to use their piece of equipment in conformance with the standard. So trying to find that niche in the market as to how to be new, how to be unique has really been what has let's say slowed that next step. And that's really been what's made us look to more of a, what do our sales reps need? What can we do to help support their growth and development from a technical side to be able to give them what they're looking for? It's kind of been hard to keep that train on the rails, to figure out where to go.
Well, and we kind of hit a home run with our first attempt. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but if you go onto YouTube on the Carboline channel, we shot a commercial for one of our fiber reinforced products where Paul brought in a pitching machine that he had access to, and we shot fastballs at it. And we shot it through the drywall, which was, I got to say, a lot of fun. Everybody
It really was.
I got to work in home remodel and got to do demolition that way. But feeding a pitching machine and letting it go through a piece of drywall was quite satisfactory. But anyway, we did that one, and it was so outside the box and so refreshing that everybody's like, what do you got next? And everybody knows, except for Godfather 2, the sequels always suck. So what do we do there? How do we beat what we've already done? And that's been part of the challenge too.
Well, what you guys have done is absolutely amazing and outstanding.
Thank you.
This interview, is there anything that you would want to express to the viewers of this episode related to the Carboline Tech Services podcast and what you guys do?
Do you want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So first off, related to the Carboline Tech Service podcast, I don't normally look like this.
No, what he's saying is that we have faces for radio, which is why we are slowly going to video.
So a couple weeks ago, I had done what every good quarantiner had done and not let this grow, or not shaved or trimmed my beard. I was a beard bro with you guys. And my wife was like, you kind of look like a hobo. So I fixed it. None be said. So real quick, before I get into other things about the Carboline Tech Service podcast, I noticed that Christopher Platt was on your YouTube channel here a week ago, and he too has a Corona stash. So I think we're going to have to do a Corona stash challenge and see if you like my mustache or Chris's better.
But can the JV beat us?
I don't know. He's got the soul patch. He looks pretty good with the soul patch. One thing that I would like everybody to know, like, we just started an online corrosion school. Carboline does a corrosion school. We're doing these webinars. So we saw a huge influx of listeners last week. And what I want everybody to know is Paul and I weren't good for a while. And everybody always comes in and they listen to the first episode. And I kind of want to take the first episode down. I actually, Paul doesn't know it yet, but one of our things that we are going to do this week is record episode 0. That's going to be hey, listen here, listen there. If you start it, what I would tell people is if you get into the 20s is about where you want to start listening to episodes. We took us a little while to realize the best way that we could be helpful to the industry is not necessarily be a commercial for Carboline and to talk about industry topics and standards and things like that. So there was a little bit of a growing experience, and I would say if you join us later on in the show, you will have a much better listening experience than if you start off with episode 1.
Yeah, I would agree completely with that statement. It took a little bit to learn what the audience wanted. At first, we thought we knew what they wanted, and we were close, but it wasn't exactly what it was looking for. And then we realized our whole episode is us showing what Carboline has to be able to bring to the industry. So it doesn't have to be a, constant barrage of Carboline products and use this, because we're already telling you that we understand what's going on, and we're going to do our best to make the right recommendation every time. And sometimes that recommendation is, nope, that's not a wheelhouse that we want to work in. You should be in a totally different type of technology. But if it's an actual liquid applied coating related product, we've probably got it. Call us up. We'll talk about it. But that's not what you need to hear on the podcast.
Well, I'm very, very excited for your success, both of you, and also your continued success with the podcast. Keep it going. For viewers of this episode, I will have in the description below a link to actually listen to the episodes. But to Jack's point, don't listen to that first one.
Right?
Yeah.
20s.
I mean, unless you're dying to know about Carbomastic 94. And I think that would be the key. As you look at the episode titles, if you see a product name in the title, we're going to talk about that Carboline product. So know ahead of time that is an episode that is going to have more of a commercial feel. But if we say something like dry abrasive blasting standards, there will be hardly any mention of Carboline products, and we're legitimately going to break down the NACE and SSPC abrasive blasting standards. And that's a good way to interpret the titles of the episodes.
Yep.
Well, I highly encourage anyone to please subscribe to the podcast, listen to the podcast, and also know that Jack and Paul, they're both open for recommendations and any type of questions that you might have. Also put their email address in the description as well. Well, Paul, Jack, I want to thank you for allowing me to have the opportunity to talk with you on my channel.
Jim, it's been an honor talking to you, and I want to congratulate you on what a great progress it's been to see with the multiple projects that you've been involved with. And you had some audio projects going on, and now you're into video, and it's just great seeing how things have expanded and grown, and the success that you've had has just been fantastic to watching them. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, Jim, thanks a lot. You've always been there for us. We really appreciate it. Congrats. It's exciting to gain 100 followers in a short period of time, and you're doing good things, and keep it up.
Thank you very much. Both of you be safe, and good luck to you both. And hopefully soon this crisis, this pandemic will be over, and we can all get back to normal life.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Have a great day.
All right.
You too,
Thank
Jim.
you. You
Thank
too.
you.